Princess Lyrana of the Ethrian Empire stood on the highest balcony of the Crystal Palace, her long silver cape dancing in the soft wind. She was 19 years old, proud, confident, and known for her sharp words that could embarrass even the strongest warriors. Every noble in the empire feared being on the wrong side of her tongue. She was not dangerous, but she was fearless, and her confidence always made others nervous around her. Lyrana loved the feeling of being in control. She loved when people reacted to her comments, when her guards straightened nervously, when ambassadors cleared their throats, and when visitors tried to hide their discomfort. She found it amusing, because she believed that anyone who could not handle her words would never handle the real world beyond the palace walls. That morning, she looked across the glowing city as she prepared to meet the visitors from Earth. She had heard humans were strong, but peaceful, advanced, but humble. To her, that combination sounded strange. Strong people act strong, she whispered to herself. But humans seem quiet. Maybe too quiet. Her young attendant, Sira, approached softly. Princess, the human delegation has arrived. They will meet you in the throne hall soon. Lyrana smirked. Good. I hope they are not as boring as the last group. Sira hesitated, worried. Princess, maybe it is better to be kind. They are our guests. After all, kind? Lyrana laughed gently. I am always kind. I only tell the truth. If humans are strong, they can take a few simple words. Sira did not argue, because no one ever won a debate with the princess. Lyrana walked toward the throne hall, surrounded by shining pillars and soft blue light. Every guard along the path straightened as she passed. Her steps were graceful, her chin high, as if she owned every stone of the palace. Inside the throne hall, the emperor and empress waited. Dozens of Ethrian nobles stood nearby, whispering quietly. The human delegation stood in a line, dressed in polished, dark uniforms with silver symbols on their shoulders. Their leader, Ambassador Hale, was tall and calm, wearing a polite smile. But Lyrana's eyes were not drawn to the ambassador. They settled on the soldier standing behind him, Sergeant Daniel Rourke. He looked young, maybe 22 or 23, but his eyes carried a calm strength she did not expect. His armor was dark, smooth, and covered most of his body. It was not heavy or bulky like Aethrian armor. It looked simple but strong. Daniel stood still, like a statue, not reacting to the whispers around him. Lyrana narrowed her eyes with interest. So this is a human soldier. They look quiet, but maybe not weak. The Emperor smiled warmly at the humans and invited them forward. Welcome, friends from Earth. May this day begin a peaceful partnership between our worlds. The ambassador bowed respectfully. It is an honor to be here. We hope to build trust and understanding. Lyrana watched carefully. She wanted to see how these humans behaved. She wanted to know if the stories were true, if they were calm, disciplined, and impossible to intimidate. She did not believe such a thing until she saw it herself. When the introductions finished, the Emperor turned toward his daughter. This is Princess Lyrana, who has studied human culture more than anyone in our court. She will assist in guiding your visit. Daniel's eyes briefly met hers. His expression did not change. No fear, no surprise, just calm awareness. Lyrana stepped closer, her silver eyes studying him. She tilted her head slightly, letting a playful, challenging smile form on her lips. Humans, she said in a soft but sharp voice, are smaller than I expected. Some Ethrian nobles quietly gasped. Everyone knew the princess loved provoking people, but doing so to a foreign delegation could be risky. Ambassador Hale forced a polite chuckle. We come in peace, princess. Size may not matter in diplomacy, but it does in strength. Lyrana replied. I hope your people are not too fragile. This galaxy is not gentle. Daniel remained silent. This annoyed her. She walked closer to him. And this one, what is your name? Sergeant Daniel Rourke, he replied calmly. His voice was steady and confident, without even a hint of discomfort. Sergeant, Lirana said, circling him slowly. Is your armor heavy? It looks simple. It is designed for mobility and protection, Daniel replied simply. It does its job. She said, raising an eyebrow. You sound very calm. Are all human soldiers this quiet? Most are trained to stay professional, Daniel replied. His steady tone made it clear that she would not easily shake him. This only made her more determined. Are you strong? She asked suddenly. Daniel blinked once. Strong enough, Lirana smirked. Strong enough for what? To carry your armor? To climb stairs? Or to fight? Daniel still did not react. Lirana folded her arms, pretending to be disappointed. You humans are slow. Calm. Careful. You think too much. Daniel did not speak. She stepped closer, now only an arm's reach away, her voice warm but teasing. Tell me, human soldier, if someone challenged you, would you run? Or freeze? Or hide behind your armor? Her words echoed through the hall. The nobles watched in nervous silence. The emperor frowned slightly, but did not stop her. He wanted to see how the humans reacted too. Daniel slowly exhaled. His face, unreadable. Then he did something no one expected. He reached for the clips on his armor. The hall went silent. He removed the chest piece and placed it gently on the ground. Then he removed both arm guards and set them beside it. Without saying a single word, he stepped away from all the protective gear. He stood there in only his simple black undersuit, light, thin, and offering no protection. Then he turned around and walked away from Lirana. Not fast. Not nervous. Not angry. Just calm, steady steps toward the far side of the hall. The Ethrians were shocked. Lirana herself froze. He is walking away? From me? Daniel stopped only when he reached the wall. He placed his hands behind his back and stood quietly, facing forward. He did not look back at her even once. Lirana felt her heart beat faster, not in anger, but in confusion. She had expected him to defend himself, argue, or react with pride. But he did none of that. He simply walked away. The Emperor cleared his throat. Sergeant Rourke, may I ask why you stepped aside? Daniel replied in a calm, respectful tone, not raising his voice. With respect, I do not respond to provocation, Your Majesty. I serve for peace, not to prove strength. Lirana blinked. His words were simple, gentle, and honest. And for the first time in her life, the princess of the Ethrian Empire had no reply. The nobles whispered among themselves, humans do not fight unless necessary. Humans do not react to taunts. This human chose peace over pride. Lirana felt something strange settle inside her chest. It was not anger. It was not embarrassment. It was something she had never felt before: interest. Deep, curious interest. She stared at Daniel as he stood with quiet discipline, waiting patiently without his armor, showing no fear even in a foreign palace. After a long moment, the Emperor ended the meeting and dismissed everyone so the humans could rest in their guest quarters. As the hall emptied, Lirana remained standing in the center, her thoughts racing. Why did he walk away? Why did he not defend himself? Why was he so calm? Why? Why did she feel like she was the one being tested? She turned her head slightly and saw Daniel leaving the hall with the human delegation. He did not look at her even once. Her hands tightened at her sides. How dare he ignore me? But why does it bother me so much? Later that day, Lirana found herself wandering the palace gardens, trying to clear her mind. The sky was soft purple, and glowing flowers lit the pathways. She breathed the fresh air, but her thoughts kept returning to the same image, Daniel walking away without hesitation. Sira approached gently. Princess, are you thinking about the human soldier? No, Lirana said too quickly. I am simply considering their culture. Sira smiled softly. He did not argue. He did not fear you. Maybe humans are different from what we expected. Lirana sighed. He walked away. No one has ever done that. Maybe he did not want conflict, Sira suggested. Or maybe he thinks he is better than me, Lirana muttered. Sira hid a small smile. Princess, does it bother you that he did not respond to you? I do not understand him, Lirana admitted, looking at the purple horizon. And I always understand people. Sira hesitated. Maybe that is why he interests you. Lirana looked at her sharply, but she did not deny it. That night, Daniel stood alone on the balcony of the guest quarters. He looked out at the glittering alien city, thinking quietly about the princess. She was sharp, proud, and fiery, very different from anyone he had met before. But he did not take her words personally. He understood she was testing him. He understood she expected him to react. And he understood the best way to show respect was to stay calm. Still, her eyes had held something unusual. Curiosity, perhaps, or challenge. He was not sure. But he knew one thing. This mission was important. Earth needed allies. Ethria needed trust. And he would not let pride get in the way of peace. Meanwhile, Lirana could not sleep. She rolled on her bed, annoyed at herself for thinking about a human soldier, of all people. Why did she care? Why did his calm voice echo in her head? Why did the memory of him walking away bother her? No one had ever ignored her before. She sat up suddenly. This is stupid, she whispered. He is just a human. But deep down, she knew something had changed. For the first time in her life, she had met someone who did not play her games. And now, she wanted to know him more. Not out of pride, not out of challenge, but out of genuine curiosity. She whispered into the quiet room, Who are you, Daniel Rourke? Princess Lirana woke early the next morning. Long before the palace lights brightened. She paced her room with a restless energy she could not explain. Normally, she enjoyed mornings. She enjoyed planning her day, choosing her outfits, and thinking about how best to handle the nobles who tried to impress her. But today, her mind was trapped in one place. Daniel Rourke, the human soldier who walked away. She sat on the window ledge and watched the sun rise over the crystal towers. The light reflected in the silver pools below, turning the air soft and warm. But still, her thoughts were tangled. Why did he walk away? Why didn't he react? Why didn't he defend himself? She whispered to herself, Why do I care? Sira entered quietly with a tray of morning tea. She studied the princess's expression and smiled, knowingly. You did not sleep well, princess. Lirana sighed, rubbing her temples. No, I kept thinking about the diplomatic meeting. Sira set the tray down. Lirana looked away. Sira laughed softly. It is not a bad thing. He simply surprised you. Guden. That is the problem, Lirana replied. I do not like being surprised. Sira poured tea into a delicate cup and handed it to her. Princess, surprises are what help us learn new things. Lirana did not answer. She only watched the rising sunlight sparkle across the city. The human delegation begins their tour. Later in the morning, the emperor invited the humans on a formal tour of Ethria. The delegation walked through the palace garden, the technology chamber, and the vast library of glowing crystal tablets. Daniel walked just behind Ambassador Hale, always alert, always calm. His armor was back on, but even with it, he walked quietly, almost gently, as if he respected every place he stepped. Lirana followed the group from a short distance. She pretended she was simply observing the humans out of duty, but her eyes kept drifting to Daniel. He did not talk much. He mostly listened. When nobles asked him questions about Earth, he answered politely but simply, never exaggerating himself or showing pride. When they praised human advancements, he humbly explained that Earth still had much to learn. He has no ego, Lirana thought, both puzzled and intrigued. How can someone so calm be a soldier? She moved closer, wanting to hear him better. An Ethrian technician asked Daniel, "Human soldier, is it true your people trained on harsh worlds?" Daniel nodded. "Some places on Earth are very difficult to live in, but humans adapt. That is one of our strengths." "Do humans enjoy fighting?" another noble asked curiously. Daniel shook his head. "Most of us do not. We prefer peace, but we train so we can protect peace." Lirana noticed something important. Daniel spoke softly, but each of his words carried weight. He did not need to raise his voice to be heard. People listened to him naturally. AB, AB, AB. She found that fascinating. The machine malfunction. During the afternoon tour, the delegation entered the energy hall. A large chamber filled with glowing cores and humming machines. These machines helped power the entire palace. Young workers monitored the systems from tall platforms, adjusting controls and checking data. The hall was usually safe. But that day, something unexpected happened. A loud cracking sound echoed through the chamber. Then, a bright spark burst from one of the tall energy conduits. A technician shouted, "The stabilizer is overheating." Another yelled, "Shut it down before it ruptures." Workers rushed around in panic. The conduit pulsed brighter and brighter. If it failed, it could release a shockwave strong enough to damage the hall. Lirana felt her chest tighten. She was near the front of the group, with the humans behind her. The workers were shouting. Nobles were stepping back. And some guards were unsure what to do. But Daniel did not hesitate. He ran forward. "Sergeant," Ambassador Hale called out in surprise. Daniel ignored the noise and reached the main control panel. A frightened Aethrian worker was struggling to disable the conduit's circuit locks, his hands shaking. Daniel took over. "But you do not know our systems," the worker said. Daniel glanced at the glowing symbols. "It's still technology. Patterns are patterns." Lirana watched as Daniel's fingers moved across the unfamiliar controls with surprising speed. He looked completely focused, his posture steady, eyes sharp. But the overheating conduit did not slow down. It hummed louder, vibrating violently. A burst of bright energy shot out from it, hitting a nearby platform. A young Ethrian engineer fell back with a cry, nearly falling off the edge. Without thinking, Lirana ran toward the platform. But Daniel reached it first. He leaped up the steps, grabbed the engineer by the arm, and pulled him to safety with swift, controlled strength. Then, instead of running away, Daniel turned toward the dangerous conduit. "Princess, step back," he said firmly, his voice calm but commanding. Lirana froze. No one ever gave her direct commands. She almost replied sharply, but something in his tone stopped her. He wasn't bossing her around. He was protecting her. Daniel looked at the conduit again. "This system is creating a feedback loop. It will keep building until it ruptures." Lirana called out, "Can it be stopped?" "Maybe." Daniel pressed more controls. "If I redirect the energy into the buffer line." The worker gasped. "But if you fail, the conduit will burst right in front of you." Daniel did not move away. "Then I will try not to fail." Lirana felt her heartbeat quicken. She stepped closer, involuntarily. "Why would you risk yourself? You do not even know our systems." Daniel replied without looking back. "Because people are in danger." A few more buttons, a few more adjustments. Then, finally, the conduit dimmed. The humming softened. The glowing energy stabilized. The room fell silent. Daniel stepped back from the controls, breathing slowly. The workers cheered in relief. Nobles clapped. The Emperor nodded with deep approval. But Lirana simply stared at him. Her heart felt strange, warmer, and lighter. Daniel walked down from the platform. The young engineer he saved bowed deeply. "Thank you, Sergeant. You saved me." Daniel nodded humbly. "I'm glad you're safe." Lirana approached him carefully. "You reacted fast." Daniel simply said, "When something is wrong, you move." "You risked your safety," she said. "Anyone would." "No," Lirana replied softly. "Not anyone." Daniel met her gaze. His eyes were calm. "I walked away yesterday because I do not like conflict without reason," he explained. But today was different. His voice was quiet, but his words hit her heart. Today, he had shown courage, not the loud kind, but the steady kind that stayed calm in danger. For the first time, Lirana realized she had misjudged him deeply. A conversation that changes everything. Later that evening, the humans gathered with Ethrian leaders in a peaceful garden courtyard. Crystal lanterns floated in the air, giving off soft, colorful light. The sound of water flowing from small fountains filled the garden with a calming sound. Lirana walked toward Daniel quietly. She was usually loud, confident, and bold. But now her steps were slow. Her voice was softer. "Sergeant Daniel," she said. Daniel turned politely. "Princess." She looked down briefly, gathering her words. "You saved that engineer," she began. "And you helped the workers. And you helped me too." Daniel shook his head. "Anyone in my place would not have done what you did," Lirana interrupted gently. "Not so fast. Not so calmly. Not with so much focus." Daniel watched her quietly. She continued, "Yesterday, I said things that were not kind. I spoke without thinking. I wanted to test you, but you did not respond. Instead, you showed something else." Daniel waited. Lirana took a slow breath. "You showed self-control. And today, you showed courage. These are things I respect." Daniel bowed his head slightly. "Thank you, Princess." Lirana felt her cheeks warm. She looked away quickly. "I also want to ask you something," she said. "Of course." "Why did you walk away?" she asked softly. "Most people argue. Most try to prove something. But you just walked away and left your armor behind. Why?" Daniel took a moment to think before answering. "In my world," he said softly, "strength is not shown by overpowering others, and it is not shown by reacting to every challenge. Strength can also be the choice to step away, especially when there is no real threat." He continued, "I walked away because your words were not dangerous. They were only meant to test me. And I did not want our first meeting to become a conflict." Lirana blinked slowly. This was the first time anyone had explained such a thing to her. On Aethria, strength was usually shown loudly through challenges, duels, debates, and displays of confidence. But humans had a quieter kind of strength, a deeper kind. Lirana found herself sitting beside him on a stone bench. She was never this calm around guests, but something about Daniel made her feel safe, talking freely. "You are very different from what I expected," she admitted. Daniel chuckled softly. "And you are different from what I expected." "How so?" she asked, curious. "I thought princesses were quiet," he replied honestly. "But you are strong, direct, very confident." Lirana laughed gently. "You expected a soft princess?" Daniel gave a small smile. "Something like that. But you proved me wrong." Their eyes met again. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, a human soldier and an alien princess, realizing that their worlds were not so far apart after all. Growing respect. Over the next days, Lorena found herself watching Daniel more closely. Whenever he walked by, she noticed his steady posture. Whenever he spoke, she noticed his calm voice. Whenever he helped someone, she noticed his natural kindness. She also noticed how he treated everyone equally, whether they were nobles, workers, or guards. He greeted all with the same respect, and each time he acted with humility, Lirana felt something warm inside her chest. She did not fully understand it, but she did not dislike it. Dark news. On the 4th day of the human visit, the emperor called a private meeting. There is a group inside our empire, he explained, that does not want peace with Earth. They believe humans are a threat. Daniel listened carefully, his face serious. They may try to sabotage the treaty. The emperor continued. We must be careful. Lirana felt a cold worry. She did not know why, but her first thought was of Daniel. She glanced at him, and he noticed her concern. Princess, we will handle whatever danger comes, Daniel said gently. But Lirana shook her head. You are a guest here. I do not want anyone to target the humans. Or you. Daniel gave her a small, reassuring smile. We will stay alert. Lirana did not smile back. Her heart felt heavy. Something was coming. Something dangerous. And she knew Daniel would be right in the center of it. The connection. That night, Lirana walked alone through the palace corridors. She stopped at the balcony, overlooking the glowing city. The wind carried a soft breeze. Daniel stepped out from a nearby hallway and nodded respectfully. Princess. Lirana hesitated, then approached him slowly. Daniel, she said quietly. He was surprised she used his first name. She looked at him for a long moment. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I do not like the idea of you being in danger. Daniel's eyes softened. Danger is part of my duty. But I do not want anything to happen to you, she insisted gently. Daniel did not speak at first. Then he said, I will be careful, and I will protect your people too. Lirana looked out at the city lights. You already did. Daniel stood beside her, both of them silent for a long while. And Lirana realized something important. Her interest in Daniel was no longer just curiosity. It was something deeper. Something she did not yet understand, but wanted to explore. And she could tell Daniel felt something too, even if he hid it behind his calm eyes. But danger was coming. The extremist group that hated humans was preparing something. And Lirana felt in her heart that the next days would test not only the treaty but the fragile, growing connection between the princess and the human soldier. The sun rose quietly over the crystal towers of Aethria, but there was no calm in Princess Lirana's heart. She stood on her balcony, watching the golden light touch the palace roofs. Normally she enjoyed this peaceful sight, but today she felt a deep worry, because today was the final day of the treaty ceremony, and she knew danger was coming. Daniel had told her the night before, We will be careful, princess. But if something happens, stay behind me. She remembered his words clearly. They stayed with her all night, echoing in her thoughts. Lirana placed a hand on the railing and whispered, Please stay safe, Daniel. She had never whispered such words for anyone else. She had never cared this way before. It surprised her, but she could not deny it. The human soldier who once walked away from her now walked in her thoughts every moment. Preparations for the ceremony. The palace was busier than ever. Workers decorated the main hall with floating lights, and diplomats prepared documents. Guards stood in double lines, watching carefully for threats. Daniel and the human team walked through the hall, checking every corner. He moved with quiet attention, his eyes scanning the balconies, the doorways, the shadows. He was not nervous. He was ready. When Lirana entered the hall, their eyes met instantly. She walked toward him slowly. Her white ceremonial dress flowed behind her like soft light. You are prepared? She asked. Daniel nodded. Yes. Are you, princess? She took a small breath. I will try to be. Daniel gave her a gentle, reassuring smile. Nothing will happen to you. I promise. His calm voice soothed her heart once again. But far above them, hidden in the darker corners of the palace, a group of masked Ethrians watched with cold intent. Today was their day. They planned to attack, cause fear, and blame the humans. And they would not stop until the treaty was broken. The ceremony begins. The great hall filled slowly. Nobles, diplomats, engineers, scientists, and guards all took their places. Floating lanterns drifted around the room, glowing like soft blue stars. The emperor entered from the front, accompanied by high-ranking officials. The humans stood at the opposite side of the hall. Daniel stood right behind his ambassador, always alert. Lyrana stood beside her father, the emperor. Her heartbeat was steady, but her mind was aware of every sound. The emperor began the first speech. "Today," he said, "we mark a new chapter between Ethria and Earth, a bond of respect, cooperation, and—" A sudden sharp noise cut through the hall. A metallic click. A whisper of energy. Daniel heard it first. His head snapped toward the upper balcony on the right side of the hall. Lyrana noticed his reaction and turned her eyes in the same direction. She saw a figure, masked, hidden behind a railing, and holding a strange device, glowing with red sparks. Before she could speak, Daniel moved. His voice rang out sharply, "Get down!" The attack. A bright energy beam shot from the balcony. It sliced through the air like a burning streak. Daniel lunged forward. He pushed Ambassador Hale down and pulled Lyrana with the other hand, shielding her with his body. The beam struck the pillar behind them, exploding in a burst of sparks. The hall erupted in chaos. Screams, running footsteps, guards shouting, "Protect the Emperor! Stop the attackers! Take cover!" Daniel looked up again. More masked figures appeared on the balconies. They were not a small group. There were many. They had chosen their moment well. Daniel grabbed Lyrana's arm. "Stay with me." She nodded quickly, trusting him completely now. A group of palace guards tried to return fire, but the attackers had higher ground. Energy bolts rained down like a storm. The Emperor's voice shouted, "Secure the princess! Secure the humans!" But Daniel was already moving. He guided Lyrana behind a large pillar, using his armored back to shield her. Another energy shot hit his armor, creating a spark. But he didn't flinch. "Daniel," Lyrana whispered, panic in her voice. "You are hurt." "I'm fine," he said calmly. Armor held. She was amazed again by how steady he stayed even in danger. Taking command. Ambassador Hale crawled beside them. "Sergeant, what do we do?" Daniel looked around the hall. The attackers were spread across 4 balconies, all firing from above. The palace guards were pinned down. "They want panic," Daniel said. "They want the treaty to fail. We won't let that happen." He turned to Lyrana. "Princess, your guards will try to reach you from the left side. Stay low and keep behind me." Lyrana nodded. But suddenly, from the upper balcony above them, one of the masked attackers aimed directly at her. Daniel saw the movement. He reacted instantly. He stepped in front of her and lifted a fallen guard's shield, just in time to block the shot. The energy beam struck the shield with a blinding flash. Lyrana gasped. "Daniel!" He lowered the shield slowly. His voice was calm, steady like a rock in a storm. Lyrana stared at him with deep emotion. She realized she had never met anyone with such courage. The princess takes action. Daniel knew they could not stay hiding. "We need to break their formation," he said. "If they keep the high ground, this will never end." Lyrana nodded slowly. "Our palace has emergency lifts behind the left columns. They lead to the upper balconies." Nut of redded, reading 7. Daniel's eyes sharpened. "Good. Can you guide me?" "Yes," she said, without hesitation. "I will go with you." Daniel frowned. "No. It's too dangerous." Lyrana's voice grew firm. "This is my palace. My people. My responsibility. I will not run while someone attacks my home. Daniel hesitated only 1 second. He saw the determination in her eyes. It was not pride this time. It was true strength. Stay close, he said. They moved together, staying low behind pillars and overturned chairs. Daniel guided Lirana carefully, always keeping himself between her and the attackers. Another shot came toward them. Daniel grabbed her and pulled her down behind a fallen table. Sparks flew over their heads. Lirana's heart raced, but she whispered, "I'm all right." Daniel gave a small nod. They reached the emergency lift, a narrow glass tube hidden behind a tall column. Daniel checked the surroundings, then pressed the activation panel. The lift opened. "Go in," he said. Lirana stepped inside. Daniel joined her and pressed the upper floor button. The lift rose silently. Inside, the world felt strangely quiet compared to the chaos below. Lirana looked at Daniel, his armor scratched, his face focused. "You keep protecting me," she said softly. "That is my duty," he replied. "No," she whispered. "It feels like more than duty." Daniel didn't answer, but his eyes softened. Upper balcony battle. The lift doors opened to the upper balcony walkway. It was long, narrow, and dim, lit by red emergency lights. Voices echoed from the other side. The attackers. Daniel motioned for silence. Lirana nodded and followed behind him. Her steps were quiet, her breath steady. When they reached the center of the walkway, Daniel leaned out just enough to see the nearest enemy. There were 3 of them, adjusting their weapons, firing downward. Daniel whispered, "Princess, stay back." She did. Daniel moved fast. He stepped out, grabbed the nearest attacker by the arm, and pulled him down, disarming him in one motion. The attacker hit the floor with a surprised cry. The other 2 turned, shocked. Daniel used the first attacker's weapon, firing a precise shot that hit the second attacker's blaster, knocking it from his hand. The third attacker aimed at Daniel, but before he could shoot, Lirana acted. She grabbed a heavy lantern from the balcony ledge and threw it. It struck the attacker's arm, making him miss his shot. Daniel quickly tackled the attacker and secured the weapon. When the struggle ended, all 3 attackers were down. Daniel turned to Lirana. "You helped," he said, almost surprised. Lirana lifted her chin proudly. "I told you. This is my palace too." Daniel's voice warmed. "Then we moved together, stopping the attack at its source." Daniel picked up one of the attacker's communication devices. A distorted voice spoke through it. "Primary target not secured. Move to stage 2. Disable the treaty core." Lirana gasped. "The treaty core is below the hall. If they damage it, all records of the treaty will be destroyed." Daniel said firmly. "We stopped them." They ran along the balcony, descending a small staircase that led to the lower chamber. The sound of battle still echoed above, but Daniel stayed focused. When they reached the treaty core room, a circular chamber filled with glowing data crystals, they found 2 masked attackers placing an explosive device near the central pillar. Lirana whispered, "They will destroy everything." Daniel whispered back, "Not today." He moved quickly, stepping behind a console and then lunging forward. The first attacker turned, startled, but Daniel struck his weapon aside and pinned him to the wall. The second attacker raised the explosive trigger. Lirana grabbed a nearby control rod and swung it, hitting the device out of the attacker's hand. It skidded across the floor. The attacker turned on her. Daniel reacted instantly. He pushed the attacker back and secured him. Within moments, both were down, and the explosive was disabled. Daniel checked the room. No more threats here. Lirana exhaled slowly. She felt her knees tremble slightly, and Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "You were brave," he said. "You protected me first," she replied softly. Their eyes held a moment of quiet understanding. The attack ends. With the treaty core safe, Daniel and Lirana hurried back to the main hall. By the time they returned, palace guards had gained control of the room. The attackers were disarmed, and the Emperor stood tall, unharmed. The moment Lyrana entered, her father rushed to her. "Lyrana." "No, father," she said. "Daniel protected me." Daniel bowed respectfully. Ambassador Hale approached, shaking Daniel's hand firmly. "Sergeant, you saved us. You saved the treaty." Daniel shook his head. "Lyrana saved part of it too." Lyrana felt her face warm slightly at his words. The hall slowly calmed. The Emperor addressed everyone. "Today we witnessed an act of courage from our human guests, and my daughter, Princess Lyrana, stood strong by their side. The group that tried to break our peace has failed. Ithria and Earth will move forward together." Cheers rose from the hall. Lyrana looked at Daniel, her eyes warm with pride. A quiet moment. Later, when the hall had emptied and the danger was gone, Lyrana and Daniel stood on the balcony overlooking the now peaceful city. The sky glowed with soft evening light. "This day could have ended very badly," Lyrana said quietly. "But it didn't," Daniel replied. "Because you were strong." Lyrana smiled gently. "Because we were strong together." A soft wind brushed past them. Lyrana turned fully toward Daniel. "I want to thank you," she said, "not just for saving me today, but for showing me what true strength looks like. You walked away from my challenge. You stayed calm under fire. You protected people without asking for praise." Daniel looked at her with warm, honest eyes. "And you showed leadership today. You didn't hide. You helped protect your people." Lyrana took a small step closer. "I misjudged you," she said. Daniel smiled softly. "And I misjudged you." She stared at him, feeling a warmth she could not fully explain. A warmth she did not want to lose. "Will you return to Ithria again?" she asked. "If Earth sends me," Daniel said. Lyrana shook her head gently. "Not as a soldier, as a friend." Daniel paused, then nodded. "Yes, Princess, I will." She smiled softly, sincerely, beautifully. And Daniel returned the smile. Not as a soldier, but as someone who respected her deeply. The legacy of that day. The treaty between Ithria and Earth was signed with more trust than ever before. The story of the attack and the brave human soldier spread across the galaxy. People spoke of the princess who once taunted a human, and the human who showed her that strength was quiet, calm, and wise. Daniel returned to Earth a hero, though he never claimed that title. He simply said he did what needed to be done. And Lyrana? She often stood on her balcony, watching the stars, waiting for the day she would see him again. Because deep in her heart, she knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning of their story.